the Democratic Republic of Congo, a land of immense beauty and untapped potential, where the lush rainforests stretch as far as the eye can see, and the rivers teem with life. This nation, blessed with extraordinary natural wealth, holds within its borders a treasure trove of minerals and resources that the world covets. However, this wealth has been both a blessing and a curse. The Congo's riches have attracted not just investors but also invaders, exploiters, and warlords. The land's beauty is marred by a history of unimaginable suffering, a dark shadow that looms over its people. From the brutal colonial rule of King Leopold II of Belgium, which decimated the population and left deep scars, to the more recent conflicts that have ravaged the nation, the Congo's history is a testament to human cruelty and greed. From 1998 to 2003, the Second Congo War, often referred to as the African World War, engulfed the region in a brutal conflict. This war drew in multiple African nations and countless armed groups, turning the Congo into a battleground for power and resources. It remains one of the deadliest wars in human history, a horrifying testament to the depths of human cruelty and greed. The war claimed millions of lives not just through direct combat, but through disease, starvation, and the collapse of infrastructure. Millions perished, not on distant battlefields but in their homes, villages, and hospitals. The war left a trail of destruction that the Congo is still struggling to recover from, with countless families torn apart and communities shattered. This essay argues that the Second Congo War stands as perhaps the most shameful war in history, not just for its scale and brutality, but for the way it exploited the most vulnerable. Child soldiers were recruited and forced into combat, their innocence stolen and their futures destroyed. The war was a horrific cocktail of ethnic violence, resource exploitation, and international indifference. Armed groups fought over control of mineral-rich areas, using the profits to fund their campaigns of terror. Meanwhile, the international community largely turned a blind eye, failing to intervene or provide adequate support. It is shameful not just for its brutality, but for the complicity of the international community, which largely turned a blind eye to the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe. The world's inaction allowed the suffering to continue, and the scars of this conflict are still felt today. The Congo story is a stark reminder of the consequences of greed, indifference, and the failure to protect the most vulnerable. The roots of the conflict are complex and deeply intertwined with the legacy of colonialism. The 1994 Rwandan genocide, which saw the massacre of nearly 1 million Tutsis, spilled across the border into Zaire as it was then known. Hutu extremists responsible for the genocide sought refuge in eastern Zaire, using it as a base for cross-border raids. This instability, coupled with the weakness of the Zairean state under Mobutu Sese Seko, created a volatile environment ripe for exploitation. The war quickly drew in neighboring countries, each with its own agenda. Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Angola, Namibia, and Zimbabwe all became embroiled in the conflict, drawn by the promise of plundering Congo's vast mineral wealth. The conflict was fueled by the illicit trade in diamonds, gold, coltan, and other valuable resources, often extracted through forced labor and brutally enforced by armed groups. Civilians, caught in the crossfire, were subjected to unimaginable horrors. Massacres, systematic rape, torture, and mutilation became commonplace. Child soldiers were recruited and forced to commit unspeakable acts. Perhaps the most shameful aspect of the Second Congo War was the deafening silence from the international community. While the world watched in horror as genocide unfolded in Rwanda, the subsequent conflict in Congo was met with indifference. The sheer scale of the suffering seemed to breed apathy. The United Nations, hobbled by political maneuvering and a lack of resources, was largely ineffective in protecting civilians. The world's media, with a few notable exceptions, failed to adequately cover the conflict, leaving millions to suffer and die in anonymity. Even after the official end of the war in 2003, violence continued to plague the eastern regions of the DRC. The conflict, which was one of the deadliest since World War II, left a deep scar on the nation. Armed groups, vying for control over the region's rich natural resources, perpetuated a cycle of violence and instability. The legacy of the conflict is profound and multifaceted. Entire communities were uprooted, and countless lives were lost. The infrastructure, already fragile, was further decimated, leaving the country in a state of disrepair. The Congolese people continue to grapple with the trauma of war, widespread poverty, and a shattered infrastructure. Families are often separated, and many children have been orphaned. The healthcare system is overwhelmed, and access to basic necessities remains a daily struggle for many. The conflict has also had a devastating impact on the environment, with deforestation, pollution, and poaching rampant. The once lush forests are being stripped away, and wildlife populations are dwindling due to illegal hunting and habitat destruction. The international community, while belatedly acknowledging its failures, has made efforts to provide aid and support. However, these efforts have often been insufficient and poorly coordinated, leaving many needs unmet, has yet to fully address the root causes of the conflict. Issues such as political corruption, ethnic tensions, and economic exploitation remain largely unaddressed. Peace talks and international conferences have been held, but lasting solutions are still elusive, or provide adequate support for the DRC's long and arduous journey towards peace and stability. Despite these challenges, the Congolese people remain resilient. Grassroots organizations and local communities are working tirelessly to rebuild and create a brighter future. The road ahead is long, but with sustained effort and international cooperation, there is hope for lasting peace and development in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Justice denied, the struggle for accountability. Accountability for the atrocities committed during the Second Congo War remains elusive. While some low-level perpetrators have faced justice, many of the key figures responsible for orchestrating the violence and profiting from the exploitation continue to evade accountability. This lack of justice not only denies closure to the victims and their families, but also perpetuates a culture of impunity that allows such atrocities to occur with horrifying regularity. The price of greed, economic exploitation, and its legacy. The Second Congo War serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of greed and resource exploitation. The insatiable appetite for the Democratic Republic of the Congo's mineral wealth fueled the conflict and continues to drive instability in the region. The international community must address the issue of conflict minerals and work towards establishing ethical and sustainable supply chains that do not come at the expense of human lives. Remembering to forget collective amnesia and historical revisionism. The Second Congo War, despite its horrific scale and lasting impact, risks fading from public consciousness. The international community, perhaps burdened by guilt and a desire to move on, has shown a worrying tendency to downplay or ignore this dark chapter in human history. This collective amnesia is dangerous, for it allows the cycle of violence and exploitation to continue unabated. Lest we forget. The importance of bearing witness. Bearing witness to history is not just a passive act of remembrance, but an active commitment to justice and change. It is a solemn duty to ensure that the stories of those who suffered are not lost to the annals of time. Remembering the Second Congo War is not about dwelling on the past but about learning from it. The war, which lasted from 1998 to 2003, was one of the deadliest conflicts since World War II, claiming millions of lives. By understanding the causes and consequences of this war, we can work towards preventing such tragedies in the future. It is about honoring the memory of the millions who perished by demanding justice, accountability, and an end to the impunity that fueled the conflict. The survivors and the families of the victims deserve recognition and reparations for their suffering. Their stories must be told, and their voices must be heard. It is about amplifying the voices of the Congolese people, who continue to show incredible resilience and determination in the face of adversity. Despite the hardships, they strive to rebuild their lives and communities. Their strength and courage are a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure and overcome. It is about ensuring that such horrors are never allowed to happen again. The international community must take a stand against war crimes and human rights abuses. By holding perpetrators accountable, we can send a clear message that such actions will not be tolerated. The world must never forget the shame of the Second Congo War. It is a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and the importance of vigilance in protecting human rights. By bearing witness, we honor the past and commit to a better future.